All right, as we from time to time thank and praise God for new opportunities and second chances, let's simply call the book of Haggai the remnant, because that's pretty much what it's about. It is about those who first go back to Jerusalem after the 70 years of exile has ended. And so they are going to be the ones who are tasked with rebuilding the temple, but it's going to hit some snags because those who had been there in their absence aren't eager to see them return and get the work done. That is all the historical context for Haggai's prophecy, as he is going to seem to come to the people, specifically their governor and their high priest, at a time when the work has stalled. So in chapter 1, as we look at the remnant and God's call for them to overcome whatever adversity has gotten in their way, he is going to seem to start out with the call to Haggai. Like we have seen in previous prophets, with an introduction by context. Verse 1 reading, in the second year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, on the first day of the month, the word of the Lord came by the hand of Haggai the prophet to Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Jehozadak the high priest. Starting the chapter off in much the same way it will end, understanding that, spoiler alert, they will get back to work in this very same year, not long after God encourages them to consider their ways. A phrase that is literally going to come up as we continue with verses 2 through 5, with a call from Haggai to the people with a question in verse 4. Is it a time for you yourselves to dwell in your paneled houses while this house lies in ruins? Speaking of the house of the Lord, the temple, which they were tasked with rebuilding. Verse 5 going on to specifically confront them with the more famous question. As we've said, consider your ways, or the challenge to consider their ways. So he's going to go through a list of things that they have done with the expectation of having much, only to realize that it's produced little. And he's going to say it's not by accident, similar to what we've seen in previous prophets who have said that the hand of the Lord is in this thing. He's going to let them know the hand of the Lord is in that, as verse 7 is again going to challenge them to consider their ways. Less mysteriously, though, he is going to give them a simple command. Go up, bring wood, build the house of the Lord, that he might take pleasure in it, and that he might be glorified by it, understanding that God doesn't need our praise, but as he has tasked his people Israel to be a light to the Gentiles, and he is in some ways called Christ, the light of the world. It's almost like flipping on a light switch in an otherwise dark situation. His light leads people to safe places. And so in glorifying Jerusalem, as it was in the days of Solomon, the thing that marked the kingdom of Israel under David and Solomon was the fact that they were leaders of high character, and that is what he wanted to attract the world to. Understanding that, he is going to say that they need to rebuild the temple, because it is going to be, once again, the center point for what God is doing, not just for Israel, but the way he is calling the entire world to himself. As he is going to say round about verse 10, going from verses 10 through verse 11, that basically there is no mystery. He is literally going to say that he is the one who has withheld and essentially brought a drought on not only the land, the hills, the grain, the wine, the oil, etc., but on all their labors, frustrating their efforts to go on about their lives while the work on the house of the Lord was stalled. Verse 12, going on through the end of the chapter, verse 15, to basically show the response from the people. Verse 12, indicating that all the remnant of the people obeyed God. Not only that, verse 12 goes on to say that they feared God. God is then going to encourage them by saying that he is with them. Not only Zerubbabel the governor, Joshua the high priest, but it's going to say all the remnant of the people, as it will, as we mentioned, conclude the chapter by saying midway through verse 14, and they came and worked on the house of the Lord of hosts, their God, on the 24th day of the month, in the 6th month, in the 2nd year of Darius the king, the very same year that God called their attention to their inattention to the work on the house of the Lord, reminding me that this remnant seems to differ from the people of Judah during the days of their conquest and captivity. in at least one significant way. And it is not their perfection, because the entire book of Haggai is pointing out the fact that they seem to have allowed those around them to discourage them from building and moving forward in the work of the Lord. But the difference is, when Haggai spoke the word of the Lord to the remnant, they actually listened. And so as God is rebuilding here, this is not going to create a utopia, because by the time the Christ comes, Israel will once again find itself in a very difficult situation, largely because of their own choices. However, as God is reestablishing them in the land, and we are getting a picture of how God goes about restoring his people, we get to see the remnant being comprised of those who are not so much perfect, but those who are willing to be perfected. God, at this point, not so much ridding his people of their imperfections, as much as he seems to have, at least for now, rid them of those who refuse to change. Making Haggai's description of the remnant an interesting contrast to Zephaniah's description of the problems that God was cleaning out of Judah when chapter 3 begins. Woe to her who is rebellious and defiled, the oppressing city. She listens to no voice. She accepts no correction. She does not trust in the Lord. She does not draw near to her God. Reminding me once again of why we sometimes say, my prayer for you is my prayer for me. May God give us a heart that is not only willing, but eager to accept his correction.